guys. So you want to bring your calculator. Now I do have calculators to loan out, but if like the day of the exam, if everybody doesn't show up with their calculator, I might not have enough calculators to use. And so you could end up being out of luck without a calculator. So please make sure you guys don't plan on using one of mine. Like if you get here and you left it at home because you were doing homework at home, it's different, but try to make sure you guys have your calculator with you. Your exam review must be done. So that review packet. Any missing work needs to be turned on the exam day, and that's it. So that's the last time to turn in missing work. So any missing work from the chapter. And then your note card you want to bring. And then obviously whatever pencil you want to use, bringing something to write with for that. Part of the exam will be the fill-in bubble questions, so like the multiple choice. And so there'll be a little bubble sheet for you guys to fill in. But that one doesn't have to be like a number 2 pencil. It's my phone takes the pictures of it. Can you close up your laptop, please? So those are the things you guys want to bring the day of the exam. Help times before then. So I might write that over here somewhere. So if you need help, so today AR, you could do after school. Wednesday, I'm not sure about AR. I don't know what the schedule is for AR on Wednesday. I'm assuming we just don't have that time, so I'm going to go with that. But I can do Wednesday after school. For a little bit. And then Thursday, we have that study time. It's like that AM study time. So if you guys are looking for help, those are the times to come in and get help on that. All right, so what I'm going to basically do is go through the different chapters and things that I would remind you guys to remember from each of the chapters. I'm not going to go fully notes because obviously we spent, how many days going through these, but kind of quickly summarizing things that we need to know from each of these chapters. So just kind of watching out for certain things. So one of the big things we did in chapter 2 was order of operations. So in chapter 2, and so this might be something you write on here and then decide if you want to put it in your note card or not. Or you want to put on your note, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely need that for my note card. Whatever you happen to want to do with this. So order of operations. Whoops. So order of operations, so parentheses, then exponents, addition, multiplication, and division, and then addition and subtraction. Remember, I put these on the same line because they're done left to right. So like a quick example of that would be like, let's do, well, actually let me change that. So 36 divided by 3 to the second times 2. What should we do first?
Exponent.
exponents. So 3 to the second comes first. So 36 divided by 3 to the second is going to be 9 times 2. This is a tricky one. What do we do next? Remember, multiply and divide is done left to right. So which are we going to do first? I disagree. We should go in left to right. So we should go this way with it. So you're going to do the 36 divided by 9, which is why we were talking about this. 36 divided by 9, which gives us 4, and then times 2. And that's a really common mistake, which is why I brought this one up. So this ends up being 8 versus being 2 if you multiply first. So that was a big chunk of what we did in chapter 2 was order operations. Another thing with chapter 2 was we did a lot of fraction work, multiplying and dividing, adding and subtracting with fractions. So being comfortable with that. So let me, so you need to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. So with adding and subtracting, what do we have to remember? It's super important with fractions. What do you have to remember about adding and subtracting fractions? Let me show you guys a quick example just to make sure you understand what I'm asking here. So I have 7/8 minus 1/6. What do I need? Yep. We need that common denominator. So between 8 and 6, I have to find a common denominator. What would it be? What can they both become? 24? Yeah, 24 works. If it's the smallest one. So 24. So in order to make 8 into 24, I have to multiply by 3. So I'd have to do the same thing to the top up here. So 3 times 7 would be 21. And then 6 becomes 24 by multiplying by 4. Now I'm ready to subtract. So 21 minus 4 gives me 17. So that's our adding and subtracting fractions. Then we could also have our multiplying and dividing. Now multiplying, this is where we can cross cancel or multiply across the top and the bottom. So I might do divide because divide becomes multiplication. So let me do an example with division. So if I have, let's actually use those same two numbers. So 7/8 divided by 1/6. So rather than subtracting them, now we're going to divide. So we're dividing instead. What's the rule of division? Yeah, keep, change, flip. So you keep this one the same. You change it to multiplication, and then you flip the fraction. Now at this point, I can choose to either multiply across the tops and the bottoms and then simplify, or we can cross cancel. It's kind of up to us what we do. If we multiply across the top, I do 7 times 6, which is 42 over 8. 8 times 1. And then I'd have to simplify. I could divide these each by 2. So this ends up being 21 over 4. So we don't need a common denominator with division, but we change it to multiplication, and then we have to remember how to multiply fractions. So if this is something you're like, holy cow, I forgot that we even did that this year, and I'll never remember that on the test, I would highly suggest putting this on your note card, you know, like making sure that you have that on there. And I'll give you guys a little bit of time to decide kind of between chapters. We'll take like kind of little breaks here. There's one other thing that I want to mention out of chapter 2 is we did distributive property and combining like terms. That was probably the big takeaway, I think, from this chapter that we definitely need to know is distributive property and combine like terms. So we did distributive property, combining like terms. I'll show you guys kind of an example of each. Again, with distributive property, these two can go together or be separated. Distributive property, I'm going to show you one that's definitely a tough one that we forget about with these. So if I have like 6x minus 4, and it's divided by 2. This is technically a distributive property problem. So what's that telling me to do? How would I simplify this? It's not asking me to solve it, it just wants me to simplify. What do I do here? What would this become? It would just say the directions of simplified. Yeah.
3x minus 2.
Yeah, so you just divide them each by 2. So I just do 3x and then minus 2. That would be the simplified version of that. It's that straightforward. Don't like overthink it, but at the same time, it's something you should know how to do. And if not, that's why we're reviewing. Like yesterday, you know, like someone's like, oh yeah, I forgot that. And I'm like, this is why we don't just take the exam without any kind of review. This isn't like a surprise exam. We take 2 days to review because we've learned a lot this semester. So let me show you guys another one with combining like terms here. All right, so this is distributive property and like terms. You want to look at this example with me and work through it. And we'll take a quick little break from notes, and you guys can decide if you want to do work on your note card at all. So again, in this direction, it would say to do simplify. We can't actually solve this because it doesn't equal anything. So all we're going to do is simplify this. And we want to first distribute and then combine the like terms. So what's being distributed here? It's being distributed in this problem. Guys, it helps a lot if you guys are engaging in this. If you don't know, it's okay to not answer, but what's being distributed here?
The parentheses.
What's being distributed to the parentheses, though? The 3. And we're going to call it a negative 3. That's what's being distributed in. So we're multiplying that into each of those terms. So the 2, nothing's happening to it. The negative 5x is nothing's happening to it quite yet. So I'm going to rewrite what I have here. So I have 2. I'm multiplying these together. So it's a minus 12. It's going to be plus 6x. And then minus 5x, because that just comes down. So those middle two terms came from my distributing. Now at this point, I'm able to combine like terms. So there's two parts that go together here. Those are alike, and then those are alike separately. So 2 minus 12 gives me negative 10. And then this is going to be a positive 1x. And so that would be considered the simplified version of that. So I can't combine it anymore, I just leave it that way. So what I'd like to give you guys a few minutes to do is take a minute if you guys want to put anything on your note card yet. Now if you're waiting to like figure out what you all want to place on your note card, that's fine. If you want to work through a few problems on the chapter 2, or let me know if there's any questions on chapter 2, if you're like, I don't know how to get started on that. Sorry. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes here to like work on note card or on the review. If you finished both, like for chapter 2 already, then you're way ahead of some people. So kind of want you guys to look at some things. I'll give you guys a few minutes here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to go next door? You need a calculator? You don't have it. You want to sit in here, or you said you want to go next door? Yeah, okay. How we doing, you guys? Any questions? things, you guys? Questions on any of the chapter 2 homework stuff, or what to put on your note card from that? Are we okay? Are you ready to move on to chapter 3? Any questions? All right, I'm going to pull up the chapter 3 stuff. Chapter 3 is a little more involved. Grab your reading and then be right back. So. All right, so we're going to talk about chapter 3. Chapter 3 was probably, like, if I had to pick a most important chapter of the semester, chapter 3 is it. So if you want to take that as there's probably going to be more questions from chapter 3, that's probably likely. If you look at the review, it's probably a little more chapter 3 heavy in terms of questions that show up on there. Like if you actually counted, it probably has more questions from chapter 3 than most other questions or other sections. So in chapter 3 is where we solved equations. So being able to solve equations, all the different types of equations that came up, that's going to be important. So when it actually says solve, like it does on the whole page for chapter 3, we have those steps that we wrote down for solving equations. So if you guys recall, we wrote these steps probably about 10 times during the chapter. So we started with solving by distributing first. So maybe let me actually make up a problem to kind of work through so we can kind of use an example that has kind of everything in it. So let's do hopefully this has enough of everything that we want to cover. So we're going to do that example to go with this. So what's our first step with solving? Distribute. So we're going to start by distributing. Very good. So we're going to distribute first. So if I go to distribute, I'm distributing this 2 in. This will be 10x minus 18 equals x minus 3 plus 7x. And some of you guys might already be dying to like do some combining like terms, and that's okay. But I'm going to tell you to kind of hold off right now just so that I can talk through this with everybody. So we distribute it. So that step is done. There's no longer parentheses. I kind of gave it away already that we're going to combine like terms now, but I'm going to do that in 2 different steps. And I do that in 2 parts. So the first type of combining like terms is I'll look on each side of the equal sign. So like this x and 7x, I'm going to combine those together. X and 7x is going to be 8x, right? So we did that at each side of the equal sign first. The next step is that I have x's on both sides, so I want to bring them together. So I'm going to bring both x's to one side. So what x do you want to move? What x should we move here? The 8x. I'd suggest moving 8x because it's smaller. So we're going to subtract 8x over. Now 10x minus 8x is 2x. Now we actually get to start to do some of the solving. Because now this just becomes a regular two-step equation that hopefully you guys are pretty good at solving at this point. So now we want to solve for x. So what are we going to do first to solve for x? Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
You can add 18.
Yeah, so on my steps up here, I'm going to write add or subtract, and it just depends on what we're trying to get alone here or what we're moving. And so like Luke said, we're going to add 18. So it looks like a minus 18, so we're going to add 18. And I already know going into this, I can tell the number is not going to be a nice number, and that's okay. That doesn't mean we did anything wrong, so don't let that freak you out. So I get 2x equals, and that's 15, I believe. Then to get our x lone, we're going to, I'd argue that it's like, yeah, divide, the technical simplify, yeah. So multiply or divide depending on so we're going to multiply or divide to get that x alone. So we're going to divide by 2. So we find out x is 15 over 2, which is 7.5. Or you could just leave it as 15 over 2. And so our fifth step is just kind of checking our answer, writing x equals, simplifying if needed. So kind of getting all our ducks in a row here. So simplify, and I'll move it back in a second here, Tucker. X equals whatever it happens to be. So that's basically the big, like you could probably knock off about 75% of the questions doing really well on problems like this. So these 5 steps, 5-ish steps, really kind of work our way through these problems so that we make sure we're understanding how to solve. So like I said, probably the big first chunk of the review problems, you could do these types, like solve it this way. However, towards the bottom of the page, we start getting a little bit different. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the other types of problems that showed up in chapter 3. So there's another couple type of problems that we want to address. Like I said, it makes me realize there's a lot in chapter 3. So also in chapter 3, we solved by proportions. So I'm going to show you guys that next. If you kind of were looking at your homework, that was like 24 and 25 on the review sheet. So we'll talk about those in a minute here. Just want to make sure everyone's caught up with us. And once you see these, you'll be like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense, but you might have forgotten how to do them. From before. the next thing that I'm going to write down is proportions. And that's when I have two equal fractions. So proportions, that's where I have, like, this is just a general problem. This is not like a great example of one. This is where I'm going to cross multiply them and set them equal. And as soon as I draw the circles, I think you'll remember what I'm talking about if you didn't already. That we cross multiply, so A times D needs to equal B times C. So hopefully that's like, oh yeah, now I remember that. I would totally, you forgot about it for a little while. But proportions is definitely an important part of this chapter. So I have a problem for us to grab one that maybe works out. It's supposed to be a 3/8. It's obviously struggling a little bit there. So, if you see a problem like this, don't automatically freak out, oh no, she gave us more fraction problems. This one technically doesn't need to be a fraction problem once we get working on it. So, when I see a fraction equaling a fraction, I'm going to try that cross multiplying. So this is the case of a problem like this. This might be something like any of these. These might be something you end up wanting to put in your note card. You're like, oh man, I've forgotten how to do that. And I don't want you to, because obviously I'm not trying to trick you on the test. So cross multiply. So we're going to multiply each diagonal here. So we're going to do 8 times 4a plus 1. And then the other way, I'm going to do 3 times 10a. I have to use the parentheses to remind me, especially on the left side, to distribute that 8. Now on the right side, I don't really have to distribute. I'm really just multiplying by 3. So it's kind of not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. So I get 32a plus 8. And then over here, 3 times 10a is just going to be 30a. Now this is a case where I'm going to argue that I'm going to kind of break my rule of moving the smaller variable. I would choose to maybe kind of change up that rule because I think it makes more sense to move the larger variable in this case. Do you see that? So this 32a, I'm going to move it over by the 30 because the 30 is already alone. If I move the 30 back over, there's going to be nothing over here, and I don't want there ever to be like nothing on this side. So at this point, I'm going to bring that 32a over. Oops. So sliding that over to the other side. So 8 equals, this is a negative 2a. And then I'm able to solve for a by dividing by negative 2. So I get negative 4 as my a value there. Now you might be running out of space, so I apologize if you are, sorry. It depends how you conserved your space. There are a few other things I want to mention from this chapter. One of them that goes with proportions is percent problems. So that was also in this chapter. So that was where we did that is over of equals a percent over 100. So if I was saying that we're going to take 35% off of, I don't know, a $40 shirt. figure out what 35% of 40 is. So I'm going to put that information into my, my proportion. It's just kind of a nice way to make sure that maybe I'm not going to miss something when I do that. So percent is 35 out of 100 of 40. And then my is my unknown, so I'm going to leave that as an x. So this helps you to realize what I have to multiply, what do I have to divide, depending on the problem. So this is going to tell me what they're taking off of that value. And so x ends up being 14, so it'd be $14 off if it's money. So that's how much we would take off of something that was $40. So there is a percent problem on this review. Reagan had some major issues with the question because it said students preferred bagels to donuts. She thought that was some false information, but just go with it. So hopefully you're able to figure out that. Also, what showed up in this section was solving for a variable. So that was like 26 and 27, trying to get that variable alone. That was one of the tougher things on here. So I might do one quick question with you guys with that, and then I'll be done for today. And we'll work on chapters 4 and 5 tomorrow, if that sounds okay. All right, so like give me another 5 minutes here, and then I'll let you guys work for a while. And then hopefully that's a good thing because the other 2 chapters are more recent, so maybe it's less like kind of feeling like we're, breaking up the cobwebs here. So then I'll let you guys work for the rest of the time once we do one of these. So if I say to solve for a variable, if you guys remember, I was saying solve for y is probably my biggest one, but I'm going to show you guys, I'll say solve for y, but it's going to be a little bit different than maybe we're used to with solving for y. So if I have like, let's use all letters, go crazy. All right, so if I want to solve for y, this is my equation. I want to get y alone. Looks pretty tough because they're all variables. So that means when we finish, we'll have all variables as well. So I want to undo what's happening to y using our steps of solving. So there's no parentheses, there's no distributive property, there's no like terms. I want to add or subtract first. So what's being added or subtracted to y? What's being added or subtracted to y here, guys? Yeah, what do you think, Justine? Yeah, mn is saying plus the xy term, so I want to get rid of mn. So I'm going to move that over. So I'm going to subtract it because it looks like it's a positive because it doesn't tell me what it is. So I'm going to subtract it over. Now, over on the right side, a minus mn, I don't know what either of those are, so I can't put them together, so I'm just going to write it that way. Now I'm trying to get y alone. What's happening to y?
Being multiplied by x.
It's being multiplied by x. So obviously the opposite of that is going to be divide by x. So we're going to divide by x to get that y alone. So it's this goofy thing that doesn't look any better, and you're like, why did we just do that? It's because you're showing that you know how to solve for a variable. And again, I know that's annoying and strange, but keep missing. Okay, so there was a lot in chapter 3. Yikes. So be done writing for a little while, done writing from me. These are things that I would suggest putting in your note card, using to work on your review. Feel free to continue to work work on your review. Again, your review is due for your exam, so either Thursday or Friday, depending when your exam is. That's for the people online. Tomorrow we'll go through sections 4 and 5, but you feel free to keep working through the packet. Anything you guys know how to do, especially those of you guys who are thinking about doing a retake, going through the chapter 5 part of the packet might not be a bad thing. Oh, I just realized something, you guys. On the review, it says point slope form. We're not going to use point slope form. So you can take a couple things off of your review. So let me pull this up quick. Here, let me see. Before you like slave over this and get yourself all bent out of shape, let me show you guys this. So on your review packet, if you want to open that up, you guys can go to chapter 5. The first part of chapter 5, we did not do point slope form because that was one of our COVID removals here. So you can cross this first part of chapter 5 out. So the stuff on point slope form, cross that out. So your review just got a little bit shorter, not much, 2 problems. But point slope form we did not do because of COVID just running out of time. Not the end of the world, you're gonna be fine. One less thing to have to worry about. So feel free to cross that out. Sorry, I forgot that was on there. It's been a long time since it was like since last year that I taught this stuff too. So it's been, it's not like I taught it this last fall. All right, so you guys have the rest of the time to work on the review packet, working on your note card, letting me know if you guys have questions with anything. Yuri, we can send you back over if you're ready to go.